同学们，我是 Sophia。这期的视频呢，想跟大家分享一个案例。我有一个学生呢，他备考了2个多星期，然后第一次参加 PTE 考试就考到了4个65这样一个好成绩。那我这个学生呢，他来自于马来西亚，本身的听力和口语的能力呢，基础是不差的。但是这个学生最大的问题就是他不知道自己的问题在哪。然后之前掌握的方法也不是特别好，因为他在跟我学习之前呢，跟另外一个老师学了2个多星期，那可能他的老师呢也是属于自身的水平比较高，但是呢教学生不是特别的细致，以至于这个学生学完了之后呢，他也不知道自己学了什么，然后也不清楚自己的问题在哪。那之前他的老师呢会告诉他，如果你阅读 FIB 不会做，那么你就要去提升你的语法，你要去提高你的词汇量然后你的口语不行的话，那你就得多去练大概就是这样的一些反馈。所以呢，这个学生他也不知道自己要怎么样去练，或者说我短时间内这个语法和词汇的能力呢，其实也没有办法在很短的时间内提升上来，所以就是一个很迷糊的状态。那我这个学生最后他自己考出来了之后呢，他也有提到之前的学习呢，就是有一点浪费时间。那么在9月16号呢，他来咨询我，开启了他后边的有效的学习。接下来呢，我就给大家分享一下这个学生在2个多星期内是怎么样一点一点把自己能力不足的地方给弥补上来的。我给大家看一下他备考的一个时间线。我这个学生呢是9月16号来咨询我的，当时呢我就问了一下他有没有参加过别的考试，或者说有没有参加过 PTE 的考试，但是这个学生呢他就说他没有参加任何考试，不知道自己的基础或者是水平是怎么样的。加上我了解到这个学生之前跟别的老师有学过 PTE，所以呢我就让这个学生在课前先做了一个模考，我说你做一下模考，然后把答题过程录制下来，那么这样的话我就能很清楚的知道你现在是一个什么样的水平，离4个65有没有比较大的差距然后做完了模考之后呢，我听了这个学生的模考录屏，就发现这个学生的声音是属于比较高，也就是识别的不太好的那种。然后这个学生他的 fluency 的话非常的低已经低到了10分了。为什么这么低呢？其实我刚刚有给大家讲到，这个学生其实他基础是不差的，那他的口语流利度低的话，就是因为没有掌握 PTE 口语的一些套路。那你想，就算是一个 PTE 基础很好的学生，他没有学过 PTE， 你让他拿着一些图片硬讲，或者说做 retail lecture 听完了之后直接描述出来，其实也是很难避免会出现很多卡顿的。我给大家看一下他当时答题做的一个 retail lecture 的笔记大家看一下就知道为什么他的 fluency 很低了。大家可以看到他这个笔记比较潦草然后也看不清楚写的是什么，每一行记的就是一些碎片短语加上他以前的老师呢告诉他 retail lecture 这个题呢，你需要根据你的笔记现场去组织语言，所以这样的话就会很卡呀。所以呢我就发现这个学生他的方法掌握的并不是太好。9月17号的时候呢，我们就先上了一节口语课，我给这个学生整体过了一遍他的口语问题。然后呢，确实像我刚刚给大家分析的这样，我带了这个学生1次课之后呢，我真的发现他的方法上就是掌握的很不行。上完这1次课之后呢，我就建议学生先去看一下我的系统的视频课程。那学生呢，接下来就开启了差不多1个星期的看视频，然后自己学习的一个过程。9月29号的时候呢，这个学生做了模考我当时都非常吃惊，这个学生他的悟性真的是挺高的，因为他的 speaking 就达到了90。因为我在视频课里面有讲，就是发音要如何去控制，然后流利度上我们是要掌握什么样的一些方法，以及达到什么样的熟练度，包括我在第1次上课的时候我都有给他讲到。那在做这次模考之前呢，我也让这个学生先去听了一下我的模考 C 卷我的作答，然后呢，根据我提到有问题的地方呢去做纠正，去跟读。也就是说这一套题呢，实际上是他就是听了一下我的作答，然后大概呢就是把自己存在的一些问题去纠正了一下。但是实际上这一套题呢，我们并没有每一道题一一的去讲过，其实还是他自己领悟加练习，不断的去提高熟练度的一个结果所以当时我看到这个成绩呢，就对他就是挺有信心的。那为了让我们上课呢能够更加的高效，他9月29号做完了模考 C 之后，我就紧接着让他把模考 A 卷的口语也做了，也就是在第2天他就又去做了一个模考 A。 那做这个模考 A 之前呢他就没有去听我的作答了，就是他的一个真实水平的一个发挥。大家有看到他第2次模考的时候，他的口语已经可以在74分左右了，其实这个成绩就已经非常非常不错了。那我也相信他的口语要考个65分是绝对没有问题的。但是这一次模考的话，还能看得出来这个学生他的 RA 做的不是特别的完美，因为 reading 只有17分，那满分的话是35分以上的，对不对？所以说我有跟他讲，就是 RA 的话还需要加强，因此呢9月29和9月30号这2次模考完了之后呢，我们可以复习的内容就比较多了，所以紧接着在10月就是国庆期间，我又带了他2次课，带着他继续去复习。一个是口语哪些地方还做的不是特别好的，那么我们去做了一个查漏补缺。那第二个呢，就是针对写作、听力、阅读的一些问题呢，我们也做了一个讲解。这个学生在10月5号去参加考试的时候就顺利出分了。那其实这个同学呢，在后期其实他之所以能够提升这么快我觉得一个呢是他确实本身的基础是不错的，然后领悟力的话也是特别好的，因为我只给这个学生上了1次课之后让他去看视频课，但是后边我在带他听读写的时候，我发现这个学生比较弱的一项其实是他的写作，他的拼写语法就是挺多问题是属于给他讲一遍，他不能很快的就注意到这些问题可能就需要给他说第2遍、第3遍这样。就包括他最后出分的那一次，他就不太好意思给我看他下边的小分，因为他说他的 spelling 还是不太行。那么我们后期是怎么样去提升读和写这2项的呢？首先呢是视频课的学习，因为视频课里面我讲的特别的细致。那课堂上呢，我就针对这个学生做的模考，写了2次模考作文存在的一些具体问题刚开始呢是我帮他把这些问题一条一条的罗列总结出来。那之后呢，就是他写完一篇作文之后呢，我会把有问题的地方标注出来，然后把问题写上，让他自己去改，也就是慢慢的去培养他一个就是有自我纠错这样一个能力。那大家可以看到他之前就是比方说存在这个拼写错误我就有告诉他怎么样去把这个拼写错误给他尽量的减少。那它的语法错误呢比较多，大家可以看到这里大概有1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8然后这里呢还用不同的颜色标记出来了哪些地方是有问题的，比方说它的模板里面经常有一些拼写错误然后哪些是模板是固定不变的，一定要固定下来，然后哪些地方是自己写的比较啰嗦，然后写的越多错的越多的就尽可能的让它去精简然后后边呢还补充了一些问题，大家可以看到一共有1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、9、10、11、12、13一直到16。大家可以看到一共罗列了16条问题。那么罗列了这些问题之后，那我就给这个学生讲，你要记住这些问题，或者说你自己再归类然后把这些问题给他总结成可能3、5条，对吧？这样的话你自己写完一篇作文，你就知道自己该去检查一些什么地方。通过这种方式呢，他在参加考试之前，也就是大概10月3、4号的时候写的作文的话，错误就少了很多。但是在正式考试中，他的拼写呢还是分不是太高，就是存在一些失误但是我觉得对于这个学生来讲，他已经属于进步很快了，而且是属于领悟力真的是不错的一个学生。最后呢，他考到了一个总分71这样一个成绩，他的听力和写作是压线过的这个还是比较幸运的。不过我觉得他之所以能够考得很顺利的话，也是因为口语这一项就是分数考得比较高，因为77分已经接近8炸了。那口语分考得高的话，RA 给阅读的贡献也会相对来说多一些。大家可以看到他之前是差读写的，但是他的最后的话，他的阅读其实考得也是不错的，上70了。最后呢，跟大家总结一下，这个学生之所以能够快速出分呢，我觉得有以下几个原因。第一个呢，就是他自己能够静下心来去看视频的讲解，然后真的是把这些方法记到心里边去了。同时呢，自己在做模考以及练习的这个过程中呢，是把这些方法利用起来了的。所以说，大家第一步呢，就是要掌握方法，而且呢，你自己要用得起来，也是适合你自己的。比方说你的口语，如果说你用某个老师的模板讲的不是很顺口，那么大家一定要大胆的去提出质疑，然后把一些不太顺口的地方给它改成是你比较顺口的单词。那第二个呢，就是一定要清楚自己的问题在什么地方。因为我这个学生是马来西亚的，然后我之前呢也带过一些香港、台湾的学生，就是非大陆的学生呢，普遍他们的读和写的能力呢会薄弱一些，所以呢这个学生他其实写作的话并不是特别好。他知道自己的问题在哪之后呢，他下来会去记住这些地方存在的问题，然后自己在练习的过程中呢，也会注意去检查这些地方。我觉得他是能够把老师讲的一些东西能够很好的吸收，然后接受并用起来，注意到自己的一些这些问题。所以呢，我觉得这2点真的是很重要。那很多同学呢，可能在备考的过程中会比较迷茫，那我觉得这个时候呢，大家还是要去寻求一些帮助不要自己闭门造车。那有的学生他可能跟着一些老师学，都有可能还会跑偏，对不对？那 PTE 这个考试的话，它的题型比较多， 方法技巧啊这些，它可能不是说是你一时半会儿琢磨得出来的。所以说，如果遇到问题的同学呢，还是要积极的去求助。最后呢，我会把这个学生他做的模考 C 和模考 A 的录屏呢，就是附在我们这个视频的后面。如果说你也是属于能力还不错，但是口语属于方法掌握的不好，或者说存在一些口音会担心这方面的问题的同学呢，可以去听一下。而且我这个学生他的流利度是非常不错的。希望今天的分享呢能够给大家帮助，大家加油！
The main difference on this occasion was that the colonists were not just fighting against the king who was determined to use his own prerogative, they were also fighting against a parliament which believed that it and it alone should raise taxes and control revenue, rights which had been won in the previous century. Believed that it and it alone should raise taxes and control revenue. The main difference on these occasions was that the colonists were not just fighting against a king who was determined to use his own prerogative. They were also fighting against a parliament which believed that it and it alone should raise taxes and control revenue, right, which has been won in the previous century. A scientist's evidence is thought to be reliable because it will have been tested and verified at every stage. This is not, of course, infallible, as scientists are subject to human error as much as the rest of us. A scientist's evidence is thought to be reliable because it will have been tested and verified at every stage. This is not, of course, infallible, as scientists are subject to. A scientist's evidence is thought to be reliable because it will have been tested and verified at every stage. This is not, of course, infallible, as scientists are subject to human error as much as the rest of us. The most obvious change in the 46% of college undergraduate are now women. When I went there, it was only the third year of the women's have been amended and about 70% of students were male. The most obvious change is that 46% of the college undergraduates are now women. When I went there, it was only the third year that women has been admitted and about 70% of male. The most obvious change. The most obvious change is that 46% of the college undergraduates are now women. When I went there, it was only the third year that women had been admitted, and about 70% of students were male. As we progress into the 21st century, communications are becoming faster and faster. Think of the millions of different media images that you are bombarded with every day. It is important now to be able to read and make sense of those images. It's as it has been to be able to read, it has been to be able to read ordinary text. As we progress into the 21st century. As we progress into the 21st century, communications are becoming faster and faster. Think of the millions of different media images you are bombarded with every day. It is as important now to be able to read and make sense of those images as it has been to be able to read ordinary text. My goodness. In the past, wars have led to inflations and higher commodity prices. Fighting disrupt trends and prevent raw material from being shipped from one country to another. In Second World War, Britain's banana was a high of luxury. In the past, war has led to inflations and higher commodity prices. In the past, war has led to inflations and higher commodity prices. Fighting disruption trends and prevent raw material from being shipped from one country to another. In Second World War, Britain, a banana was the high of luxury. Globalization refers to a set of changes rather than single change. Many of these changes are social, cultural, and political rather than purely economic, and one of the main drivers in addition to the global marketplace is the communication revolutions. Globalizations refer to a set of changes rather than global market space is the communication revolutions. Globalization refers to a set of changes rather than a single changes. Many of these changes are social, cultural, and political rather than purely economics. And one of the main drivers in addition to the global marketplace is the communications revolutions.
Understanding of mathematics is vital for most science subjects.
Understanding of mathematics is vital for most subjects.
If we work on this together, we'll get through it quickly.
If we work on it together, we will get through it quickly.
The new law professor used to work for the World Bank.
The new law professor used to work for the World Bank.
Many environment experts are very concerned about the future of our planet.
Many environmental experts are very concerned of our future of our planet.
Graph shows the percentage of people who smoke according to gender.
The graph shows percentage of the smoker according to the gender.
The meeting is always on the third Wednesday of the month.
The meeting is always on the third Wednesday of the month.
We can go anywhere, do anything, achieve any height.
We can go anywhere, do anything, achieve any height.
Construction of the Empire State Building in New York was completed in 1931.
Construction building in New York is completing in 1931.
People under 70 have a higher quality of life than those over 70.
People under 70 have high quality of life than those after 70.
The area of Canada is more than 3.8 million square miles.
The area of Canada is more than 3.8 million square miles. Road traffic Great Britain's billion vehicle kilometers on road vehicle, car and taxi 1952 and 2005. Lowest number 1952 20. Highest number 2005 500. The graph gives information of road traffic in Great Britain in billion vehicle kilometer, including all motor vehicle, car, and taxi in year 1952 to 2005. According to the graph, the lower number will be 1952, which is about 20. The highest number can be found in 2005, which is about 500. According to the graph, different years have different figure. In conclusions, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. Figure 1 UK Employment Rate 1971 to 2006 Economic and Social Research Council Percentage 1971 to 2005 1985 1971 4 12. The graph gives information of Figure 1 UK Unemployment Rate 1971 to 2006 in Economic and Social Research Council, including percentage from year 1971 to 2005. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in 1971, which is about 4. The highest number can be found in 1985, which is about 12. According to the graph, different years have different figure. In conclusion, if the graph continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. My God. Sales by quota, products, product sec, product X, product Y, product sec, product X, product sec, product Y, product X. Quarter, dollar, year 2004, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 1. The graph gives information of sales by quarter in products, product Z, product Y, product X in value in dollar, including year 2004. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in quarter 2, which is about 2,000. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in quarter 1, which is about 12,000. According to the graph, different figures have different figure. In conclusions, if the graph continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. Different items have different figure if the figure continue in the same trend. The graph gives information of life expectancy at birth Australia, including male and female in year 1995 to 2005. The lowest number 78, highest number 75, highest number 83. The graph gives information of life expectancy at birth in Australia, including males and female in year 1995 to 2005. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in 1995, which is about 75. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in 2005, which is about 83. According to the graph, different years have different figure. In conclusions, if the graph continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. If the figure continue in the same trend, adult literacy by region, literacy rate by sex 2000 to 2004, including percent, including males and female in world, sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean, Asia, Arab stage, Latin America, and the Caribbean. The graph gives information of adult literacy by region, literacy rate by sex 2000 to 2004 in percents, including world, sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Asia, Arab stage, including male and female. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in sub-Saharan Africa, which is about 53. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in Latin America, which is about 91. According to the graph, different countries have different figure. In conclusions, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. Economic conditions, the Philippines 2000 to 2004. Consumer Price Index GDP, year 2000 to 2004. Lowest 100, highest 120. Consumer Price Index. Price Index. Consumer Price Index, GDP. The graph gives information of economic conditions, the Philippines 2000 to 2004, including Consumer Price Index in GDP in year 2000 to 2004. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in year 2000, which is about 100. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in 2004, which is about 120. According to the graph, different years have different figure. In conclusions, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future.
Take the coffee industry. The figures are roughly these. The coffee market in the world is worth about 60 billion. The growers get about 5.5 billion. 10 years ago, the market was about 30 billion, and the growers got a third of that. What has happened? What has happened is that well-meaning people, Americans, Germans, Europeans, decided that they would help Vietnam. And so they created a coffee industry there, which is now the second biggest producer in the world. This has had serious effects on other countries like Colombia that depend on coffee exports.
The lecture mainly talk about coffee industry. According to the lecture, the speaker mentions about the world coffee industry worth about 60 billion and grow about 5.5 billion in last year. According to the lecture, the speaker also mentions 10 years ago it was worth about 30 billion. According to the lecture, the speaker also mentions Germany, Europeans, America try to help Vietnam. According to the lecture, the speaker also mentions about the second large industry. According to the lecture, the speaker also mentions Colombia has affected. In conclusion, the lecture is mainly talk about coffee industry.
You can see that the two charts each give quite a different picture of the performance of boys and girls
in the two key subjects of maths and English. It shows that in English, girls consistently outperform boys over a period of 6 years, achieving scores about 10% above their male peers. There is quite a different picture when we look at the maths results, with no real difference between genders in the results. What is the explanation for these key differences? To answer this question, researchers look at biological and cognitive factors and a range of social factors. The interaction between these different components in early childhood development are seen as maintained and reinforced in the school context, and this leads to distinct gender patterns of behavior in skills with direct consequences for school performance and achievement. The argument uses this evidence to show that biological factors, such as patterns of cognitive development, are closely linked to social factors, such as learned gender categories. These cognitive skills are learned both preschool and subsequently at school, supported by the responses of teachers, creating a reinforcement of patterns.
The lecturer mainly talk about boys and girl performance. According to the lecturer, the speaker mentions girls have outperformed boys over the last 6 years about 10% and above. According to the lecturer, the speaker also mentions mathematics has low difference in both gender. According to the lecturer, the speaker also mentions about biologic factors, social factors, and early childhood development. According to the lecturer, the speaker also mentioned gender patterns with school performance. Teachers have responsibility on that. According to the lecturer, the speaker also mentions social factor learn category. In conclusion, the speaker is mentions about performance.
In our survey, over 100 CEOs who had recently been through an acquisition or merger were asked which areas of their activities needed the most effort. As you can see, the most frequent response to this question was that information technology requires the most integration effort. According to 58% of those we surveyed, IT was the most time-consuming and needed the most work. This is understandable, as many of the IT issues are extremely complex, and the consequences of any change in IT can have a significant impact. The key is how quickly and effectively IT integration can be achieved, and there has to be a clear understanding of the consequences there may be of not getting it right. The two other areas requiring significant attention, sales, marketing and business development on the one hand, and financial management on the other, both were selected by 49% of the respondents.
The lecturer mainly talk about information technology. According to the lecturer, the speaker mentions there's the survey conducted by 100 CEO, and which most of them are confirmed that IT need most effect, which is about 58% responded, and need more time. According to a lecturer, the speaker also mentioned significant impact. According to a lecturer, the speaker also mentioned clear understanding. According to a lecturer, the speaker also mentioned sales marketing development, financial management needs significant effort, which is about 49% response. In conclusion, the lecturer mainly mentions about IT.
Which country has the third largest population in the UK?
Wealth.
Camels are most likely to be found in what habitat?
Desert.
On a compass, which direction is the direct opposite of southwest?
Northeast.
What do most successful businesses aim to do? Make a profit, declare bankruptcy, or comply with audits?
Make a profit.
What is it called when the price of goods and services steadily increases over a period of time?
Inflation.
What mistake has the student made when trying to access the site?
Invalid password.
Algebra, calculus, and trigonometry are divisions of which academic field?
Mathematics.
What campus building would you go to if you wanted to borrow a book or magazine?
Library.
Is a profit a loss in funds or a gain in funds?
Profit and loss. Can't remember.
What energy source does this light bulb need in order to function?
Electricity. Principles of cooperation is one of the things that sets conversations apart from similar activity such as lecture, debates, arguments, and meetings. Other qualities which help to defend conversations include the equal distributions of speaker right, mutual respect among speakers, spontaneities and informalities, and non-businesslike environments. The principles of cooperation is one of the things that set conversations apart in similar activities such as lecture. The principle of cooperation is one of the things that sets conversations apart from similar activities such as lecture, debates, arguments, and meetings. Other qualities which help to defend conversations include the equal distributions of speaker right, mutual respect among speakers, spontaneity and informally, and non-businesslike environments. The American executive, unlike the British, has no connections with the legislature, and this lack of coordination between executive and executive and legislature is one of the distinctive features of American federal governments. The Constitution granted against executive control by disqualified federal officers, whether civil or military, from membership in Congress. The American executive, unlike the British, has no connections with the legislature, and the lack of coordination between executive and legislature is one of the distinctive features of American federal government. The Constitution guarded against executive control by disqualifying federal officers, whether civil or military, from membership in Congress. Oh my goodness. In the summer of 2006, Israel experienced on an unprecedented scouts on the Rhine, Europe, Bush's waterway, low water forced ships to carry less cargo and make up for loss in revenue, with surcharge of up to 50% in Italy. And the agriculture conferences announced that the crop harvest was the lowest in the 2 decades. In the summer of 2006, Europe experienced on an unprecedented scout on the Rhine, Europe business waterway, low waters forced ships to carry less cargo and make up for lost revenue, with surcharge of up to 50%. In Italy, the Agriculture Confederacy announced that the grape harvest was the lowest in 2 decades. The history of life Earth is filled with mystery, life and death struggles, and bizarre plants and animals as amazing as many mythological creatures. Study life history is one of the most fascinating and challenging parts of biology, and researchers go about it in several ways. The history of Earth is filled with mysteries, life and astrology, and bizarre plant. The history of life on Earth is filled with mystery, life and death struggle, and bizarre plants and animals as amazing as many mythological creatures. Studying life history is one of the most fascinating and challenging parts of biology, and researchers go about it in several ways. Brute food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans search for food, they learn to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to study subjects, they lose appetite. Brute food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans search for food, they learn to avoid toxic and spoiled objects. Brute food is rare in nature. Food researchers say that when humans search for food, they learn to avoid toxic or spoiled objects. When we're orphans blue, black, or purple, when food dyed blue is served to study subjects, they lose appetite.
It is quite clear that rising prosperity does not make people feel more content.
It's quite clear that rising probability doesn't make people feel more content.
This course will examine some of the profound ethical dilemmas.
This test will examine some of the political profound and alignment.
Fees are heavily discounted and bursaries are available for delegates.
Fees are heavily discounted and available for delegates.
Students are held accountable for adhering to established community standards.
Students have account to establish the account standard.
This article covers the who, where and when of the conflict.
This article covers who, when, and where of the contact.
Essays should be typed with double spacing on white paper.
Essays should be typed in double spacing in white paper.
The medical centre is located near the supermarket on North Street.
The medical center is located near to the supermarket in North Street.
The mismatch between the intended and reported uses of the instrument becomes clear.
The mystery of the instrument becomes clear.
New York City is famous for its ethnic diversity.
New York City is famous with diversity.
A periodical is a publication that is issued regularly.
A periodical is a publication that is issued regularly. Source of funding higher education in Scotland. Endowment Service Overseas Fees Research Funding Council Grants 1994-5 and 1997-98 in millions dollar, highest figure, lowest figure, about hundreds, 700s. The graph gives information of source of fundings for higher education in Scotland, including Endowment Service Overseas Fees Research Funding Council grants in million dollar in year 1994 to 1995, 1997 to 1998, 2001 to 2002. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in 2001, which is about 700. According to the picture, the lowest number can be found in 2001, which is about 10. According to the picture, different years have different figure. In conclusion, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. Chart C. Retirement from maintained school. Maintained school by reasons England 1998 to 1999, 1999 to 2005 and 2006. Highest figure 2006 about 6,000. Lowest in Retirements. The graph gives information of Chelsea retirement from maintained school by reason England 1998 to 1999 to 2000 to 2006 in retirements in year 1998 to 2006. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in 2005, which is about 6,000. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in 1998, which is about 10,000. According to the graph, different years have different figure. If the graph continues in the same trend, it will be hard to put it in the future. Proportions of trip mixed by moods, Sydney 2000 and book for vehicle, train, bus, ferry, walk only, other percents 72 others. The graph gives information of proportions of trip made by moods in Sydney 2004, including vehicle, train, bus, and ferry, walk only, and other. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in vehicle, which is about 72%. According to the picture, the lowest number can be found in other, which is about 2%. According to the picture, different transport have different figure. In conclusions, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. Increase in the number of dwellings over the past 10 years. Region Sydney City during stock year. Increase number percentage increase. Highest number 2004 76,000. Lowest number percentage 71. The graph gives information of increase in number of during over past 10 years, including region during stock year, increased number percentage increase in Sydney City. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in year 2004, which is about 76,000. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in percentage increase, which is about 71%. According to the graph, different characters have different figure. In conclusions, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. Evolutions of success rate in Canada 2000 to 2003. Success rate fewer successful 2000 to 2003. Percentage rate. Success rate in percent. Highest 2000, lowest 2002 12.5. Fewer successes. The graph gives information of evolutions of success rate in Canada in year 2000 to 2003, including success rate in percent from year 2000 to 2003 in failures and successes. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in year 2000, which is about 70. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in 2002, which is about 12.5. According to the graph, different years have different figure. In conclusions, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future. Average class size in UK school 1994 to 2006. Average class size year 1994 to 2006. Primary, secondary. Highest 1998 28. Lowest 1994 21. Average class size. The graph gives information average class size in UK school in year 1994 to 2006, including average class size in year 1994 to 2000, including primary and secondary. According to the graph, the highest number can be found in 1998, which is about 28. According to the graph, the lowest number can be found in 1994, which is about 21. According to the graph, different years have different figure. In conclusions, if the figure continue in the same trend, it will be hard to predict in the future.
The basis of all life on Earth is the cell. All creatures on Earth are made up of cells. I'm not going to dwell on the biology of cells much. It's not that relevant, but I do want to point out a few things. First of all, there are two sorts of cells. There's a thing called the prokaryotic cell, which is fairly simple. And it's the thing that all bacteria are made of. And then we have a eukaryotic cell, a much more complicated beast, on the right, which didn't appear until well into the history of the biosphere on Earth. And there are many single-celled eukaryotes, but there are also, and importantly, multicellular organisms, and all of those are based on the eukaryotic cell.
The lecture many talk about cell. According to a lecture, the speaker mentions about tools of a cell. According to a lecture, the speaker also mentions about prokaryotic cells, which is made by bacteria. According to a lecture, the speaker also mentions about eukaryotic cells, which is important cells. According to a lecture, the speaker also mentioned these two cells is very difficult and very hard. In conclusions, the lectures many talk about self. What I'm talking about.
Unemployment, lost productivity, and lost contributions to the community are typical and usually uncounted costs of homelessness, and they can be addressed with an integrated strategy. Integrated housing also addresses environmental and sustainability challenges. We incorporate green design principles to create healthier buildings for our residents and staff, limit emissions, and contain energy costs to preserve affordability and reduce the impact of our buildings on the environment. Integrated housing allows a whole community response and the opportunity for mutually beneficial public-private collaborations. Corporate investors match the contributions of government to pay for the acquisition and redevelopment of the Prince George. Corporate investors receive valuable tax credit and other benefits from the federal government and significant marketing benefits for their brand locally. Philanthropy supported the initial program and business planning for the project. Student architects from a local university designed and built an entry-floor art gallery for use by community arts organizations. Historic preservation groups assisted with the fundraising for the ballroom restoration. And the restored ballroom is a rental venue used by many organizations for events, training, fundraisers, and the rental proceeds benefit Common Ground's other supportive housing work, and the jobs created through the caterers are set aside, many of them for our tenants.
The lecturer many talk about homelessness. According to a lecture, the speaker mentions about uncountable costs for homeless. According to a lecture, the speaker mentions about environment changing limited reasons. According to a lecture, the speaker mentions about impact for building, contributions governments, tax from governments. According to a lecture, the speaker mentions about business training, student architecture. According to a lecture, the speaker mentions about rental reserved by many used by many organizations. In conclusions, the lecturers mainly talk about homelessness.
But there's a plant, another dandelion relative, called Achillea, also known as yarrow. And in the Iliad, which is based on events that happened perhaps as much as 2000 BC, Achilles is mentioned as using this herb to heal the wounds of his warriors. So the use of medicinal plants certainly goes back that far. The Romans, of course, used medical herbs, including dandelions. By the time we got to the Middle Ages, dandelions were a well-established medical plant. They were something that was planted in virtually every monastery across Europe. All the many monasteries, the Benedictine monasteries, were havens of knowledge, of the classical knowledge of the ancient Greeks and Romans was kept alive in the monasteries. And monasteries, of course, they were where you would go if you were sick, because the monks were the people who knew the ways to use plants to cure people. So dandelions were a very common plant in monastery gardens. Dens leonis is medieval Latin for tooth of the lion. And of course, you can still buy dandelions off the shelf as a medicine to this day.
The lecturer many talk about plant. According to a lecture, the speaker mentions the plant called Achillea with 2000 BC using their earth to heal. According to a lecture, the speaker also mentions about medical air, wells and stables. According to a lecture, the speaker also mentions about classical knowledge, people who know the way by the dandelions as medicines. According to a lecture, the speaker mainly mentions about the dandelions. In conclusion, the lecture is about plants. 根本不懂我自己说什么。
How many times a year is a quarterly journal published?
4.
A lack of which kind of weather causes drought? Dry weather or rainy weather?
Rainy.
Which is usually considered against the law? The use of illicit drugs or the use of prescription medication?
Drug.
When would it be safer to take a medication which causes drowsiness? Before sleeping, driving, or operating machinery?
Before sleeping.
Which instrument is used to measure variations in temperature?
Thermometer.
When you create a table, the data in the horizontal dimension is organized in rows, and the data in the vertical dimension is organized in what?
I don't know.
Where is the natural habitat of animals that are classified as aquatic? In the land, in the sea, or in the sky?
In the land.
Which of the 5 senses are you using if you detect the odour of gas in the laboratory or in your kitchen?
Guess.
How many people are in a quartet?
I don't know.
How many legs does a biped have?
4.